Yo, what's going on, YouTube? This your brother Radio 1 here. Peace in Hotep. First, I want to give all honor and all praise to the God of my ancestors, the God of Africa. Yes, Africa, the Most High, His Majesty, Amun-Ra. Second, I want to give all praise and all honor to my great ancient African Pharaoh ancestors. May they rest in peace. And I also want to give all praise and all honor to our great elder scholars that laid the foundation of this truth, such as Dr. John Henry Clark, Dr. Yosef Ben Yakanan, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, Dr. Chancellor Williams, Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, and my brother Ashra Kwesi, who I want to thank. I want to thank you, brother Ashra Kwesi, because your videos have really woken me up to the truth. And I just want to thank you for having that positive impact on my life. And I got nothing but respect for you. And I wish you nothing but blessings. Thank you, brother. And I also want to give a praise and glory to my brother, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, and Professor James Smalls. Now, in this video, I will be debunking the lie that the ancient Egyptians were not black people, and debunking the lie that Herodotus, the historian Herodotus, when he came into Egypt, that he did not see black people. No, this is a lie. Okay? Now, a little bit about myself. I've been on here on YouTube since 2007, okay, showing and educating the brothers and sisters on the truth of who the ancient Egyptians are, okay? I've been on here since 2007, so I'm not some Johnny-come-lately to this, okay? So, but to all you that says the ancient Egyptians were tan Mediterraneans or Middle Eastern Arabs, no, you are wrong. This is a lie, okay? The ancient Egyptians did not look like Sylvester Stallone. The ancient Egyptians did not look like Osama bin Laden, okay? The ancient Egyptians did not look like the people of the Middle East, such as the Arabs, the Iranians, and the Iraqis. No, they did not look like the Greeks or the Romans or the Spaniards or the people of Turkey or the people of India. No, the ancient Egyptians were a native African Nile Valley people, and they look more like the people of Ethiopia, the people of Somalia, and the people of the Beja of Sudan, and the people of the interior of Africa, and the African Americans, okay? These are the people that the ancient Egyptians look like. Now, you still have some Egyptians in the south of Egypt, okay? In the area of Luxor and Aswan. They are still black today, and they do not look like the people of the Mediterranean or the people of the Middle East. They look like the rest of the African population, okay? This is the fact. These are the facts, okay? Now, when we're dealing with Egypt, Egypt is not on the Mediterranean. Egypt, meaning the pyramids, the Sphinx, the temples of Karnak, the temple of Abu Simbel, does not sit on the Mediterranean. It sits inside the interior of the African continent along the Nile River Valley. Okay, so in other words, Egypt was not a Mediterranean empire. Egypt was an African Nile Valley empire. Okay, just want to get that straight. Now, moving on. White people, okay, or you pseudo scholars, or you racist white supremacists. You lying, racist, white supremacists. You have no ancestral connection to ancient Egypt at all. Okay? Your ancestors were European. Okay, now you may have some knowledge of ancient Egypt, and you may know how to read the hieroglyphics, and you may go to Africa and dig up some artifacts or do some excavations, okay, or make some discoveries, okay, but that does not make you a descendant of Pharaoh and the ancient Egyptians. That does not mean that you can claim to be a descendant of the ancient Egyptians, okay? Your ancestors were the Europeans, okay? Only Africans can lay claim to be descendants of the pharaohs and ancient Egyptians. And you also have no ancestral connection to Atlantis or the Atlanteans, because the Atlanteans were an African people, okay? A matter of fact, Egypt and Atlantis was the East and West African connection, because in Egypt you had the worshippers of Amun, or the worshippers of Zeus, and then on the west coast of Africa you had the worshippers of Poseidon, okay? This is what Homer meant when he mentions the East and West Ethiopians. These were the East and West Africans, okay? The worshippers of Poseidon in West Africa, and the worshippers of Amun, or the worshippers of Zeus, in East Africa on the Nile Valley, which was the cities of the 100-gated Thebes and the cities of Napata or Meroe, okay? These were your true Ethiopians, okay? And you had the Atlanteans in West Africa and the worshippers of Amun in East Africa, okay? So the Atlanteans were not Europeans, okay? Stop trying to connect these histories with Europe. They have no connection at all. Everything you say is a myth, and it's made up, and it has no historical truth, okay? But white people are descendants of Europeans. White people are descendants of Europeans that we call Gauls and Germanics and Celts. These people dwelt in the far north of Western Europe, okay? And these people, your ancestors, the Gauls and Germanics, they had no connection to ancient Egypt or Israel or none of that, okay? Because they never set foot in Egypt, and they were unknown to the Egyptians. The first people to make your ancestors known were the Romans, okay? During the time of Caesar, when Caesar invaded the truth, okay? Because people are starting to see that the white race or the white European race are a race of fakes, a race of liars, and a race of frauds, okay? I'm just telling you the truth, okay? Because you want to steal the identity of other people in order for people to see you as the most glorious or the highest of high. Well, I'd rather be myself with no glory than be a fake with glory, okay? Okay? Because there's nothing worse than being a fake, than trying to be somebody else, okay? So learn to be yourself, okay? Ancient Egypt belongs to African people. Atlantis belongs to African people. Be yourself. Stop trying to steal our identity. Okay, you have your own history. You have your own culture. You don't have to steal and rob us and try to hijack ours. Okay? Now, and also, okay, when the Greeks and Romans talked about the Gauls and the Germanics, they called them uncivilized savages. So the racist white supremacist Arthur Kemp, in his book March of the Titans, has lied to you, okay? All this is myth. This is not historical. Read the historical facts. Stop reading myths, okay? Even we'll be dealing with the ancient myths. You have no connection to the ancient myths, okay? All the stuff, all the lies made up about white history are recent. They're not even They're not even in ancient records. Okay? So, moving on. The Arabs, or the North African invader of the Middle East, you also have no ancestral connection to ancient Egypt. Okay? Your ancestors invaded Egypt during the 6th century AD. The Arabs, the Arab invasion of Egypt, that is your ancestors. The Egyptian, the Pharaonic Empire was long dead, was long gone when your ancestors invaded Egypt. Okay? So, you are not the descendants of the pharaohs. Okay? Because the pharaohs were long gone. Okay? Your history, your people were known as the Asiatics. These were the enemies of the pharaohs. Okay? They were not related or kin. No. They were the enemies of the pharaohs. Now the Arabs were more related to the Persians and to the Babylonians. Okay? And the Indians, these were the Asiatics. These were your people. Okay? The Assyrians. Okay? The Hittites. These were the Asiatics. You had nothing to do with Egypt. The Egyptians were African. Okay? The Egyptians were related to all other Africans. Okay? Now, that's the facts on that. Moving on. Now, I want to touch on the Herodotus claim. Now, Herodotus was an ancient Greek historian that lived during the 5th century BCE. Okay, somewhere around 2,500 years ago. Okay, and he visited Egypt and he spoke with the Egyptians during this time. This was when the true Egyptians were still in Egypt. And he saw the Egyptians and he wrote in his books called the histories of how the Egyptians look. This is probably the most ancient and the most clearest physical description of a people ever. Okay? Because the Bible mentions the Egyptians as the sons of Ham, but they don't explain how they look. But this account from Herodotus explains clearly how these people look 2,500 years ago. Okay? And in his books, the histories, book 2, chapter 104, he says that there can be no doubt that the Kotians are an Egyptian race. Then he goes on to say, my own conjectures were founded first on the fact that they have black skin and woolly hair, which certainly amounts to nothing because other nations do too. Now, when he says other nations, he is referring to the Ethiopians and the Pygmies of Africa. And they also had black skin and woolly hair like the Egyptians. Okay? But the racist, white supremacists, or lying Egyptologists will tell you that Herodotus did not mean black as in literally, or he didn't mean black. He didn't mean black literally. He meant black as in dark or tan Mediterranean or dark Caucasian. Okay? No, this is a lie. Because the word that Herodotus uses is melancholy. Okay? Melon meaning black, khoi meaning skin or complexion. Okay? Now melon derives from melos or mela, which in the Greek strong concordance it means black. Okay? As in the opposite of white. Now the word for white is leukos. Leukos. Leukos or Leucos. Leukos. And the opposite of leukos was melos. Okay? Melas. Okay? And we're going to look it up in the strong concordance. Okay? And here it is. It says, Mela. The Strong Concordance, 3189. It says, Mela's short definition, black. Okay? And this word in the New Testament Bible, when we go to Revelation 6 and 5, okay? Revelation 6 and 5, this same word is used to describe the black horse compared to the red horse and the white horse. Now the word for red is pyros in Greek. Okay? So the word that was used in the New Testament for black horse is the same word that was used for the black Egyptians seen by Herodotus. Now, Herodotus himself was a tan Mediterranean because Herodotus came from Caria, Turkey. Okay? Caria, Turkey is on the coast of Asia Minor and it lies on the Mediterranean Sea. Okay? So Herodotus was himself a tan Mediterranean. And when he came into Africa, he seen people who were when he came into Egypt, he seen people who were much darker than himself. And he seen people with much kinkier hair than his own. Okay? So when Herodotus came into Egypt, he seen black Africans. Now this word, melas, you cannot be a medium tone or tan person and be called melas. No. To be called this word, you had to really stand out. Okay? The Egyptians were so dark, were so black, that their complexion stood out. They were the blackest of all mankind. Okay? The region where Herodotus came from, that region was inhabited by people that were medium tone or tan. Okay? But when they came into Africa in ancient times, they seen black people. Okay? That is the facts. Okay? Now, when we deal with the other word, which is allotrichus for woolly hair, okay, Herodotus calls him woolly hair. Now, the racist white supremacists will tell you that no, he did not mean woolly hair, he meant curly hair. No, it meant woolly hair. Now, they will tell you that, well, we discovered the mummies of the Egyptian mummies, and the hair on the Egyptian mummies doesn't show the woolly hair Herodotus spoke of. And this debunks Herodotus. No, this is a lie. Okay? This is why you have to know history. You have to know the chronology of events. Now, the mummies discovered, the Egyptian mummies that were discovered date to a time called the New Kingdom. This was a time when Egypt was a thriving empire. This was a time when Egypt was living in royalty. They were living lavishly. They were living in luxury. Okay? And they did all kind of things to beautify themselves. Okay? They used cosmetics. Okay? And they used chemicals in their hair. Okay? And these chemicals affected the texture of their hair. No different from what you see with black women today. Okay? Black women today most black women have long, straight, or wavy hair because they use chemicals to change the texture of their hair. The same with the ancient Egyptians during this time. Okay? Just because it was 3,000 years ago, because it was so ancient, doesn't mean that Egypt was some primitive empire and the people were walking around naked and doing nothing. No. This was a thriving empire. The same things that we do today, the same cosmetics that we use today, they were using it back then. Okay? It was the same back then. But, okay, that covers that. But when Herodotus came into Egypt, the Egyptians were slaves. They were conquered. They were invaded and conquered by the Persians. And they were made slaves by the Persians. Okay? And they were deprived of the good things that they used to enjoy. Okay? Because when Herodotus came, he seen slaves. When he saw the Egyptians, he seen them in their original nature. Okay? Because Herodotus came into Egypt when Egypt was invaded and conquered by the Persians 100 years, about 80 years before Herodotus came into Egypt. Okay, so when Herodotus came into Egypt, the Egyptians were just being made slaves. They were slaves to the Persians. Okay, no different from when the Africans were brought over the Atlantic and made slaves in America. Okay, when my ancestors were brought here to America as slaves, okay, they didn't have the long perm hair and the long wavy hair that you see black women have today. Okay, they were seen in their original nature, in their original form. Okay, that's why Herodotus, when he went into Egypt, he seen black skin and woolly hair because he seen slaves. Now, you have some Africans, some native Africans in Ethiopia, in Somalia, in all through the Sahara Desert, and even in southern Egypt that have naturally straight and wavy hair. Okay? But we are dealing with what Herodotus saw. Okay? Herodotus saw black skin and woolly hair. And that's why he called them black skin and woolly hair, because when he came into Egypt, they were slaves. Okay? Now, that covers that. Now, and also, black people, this is your history. This is your culture. Okay? Even if you have nothing else in the world and you have been deprived of everything and all you have is your history and your culture left, you have to fight. You have to protect it. Okay? Because these racist, white supremacists are trying to steal your culture. Okay? They don't care about being themselves. All they care about is glory. And all they care about is power and greed. Okay? They want to use your history and your culture to rule over you and oppress you. Okay? But this is your history and your culture. And you got to put up a fight for it. And you got to put forth some effort. You cannot be careless. Okay? You have to show some care. These are our ancestors. Okay? It is a game to them. Okay? That's why they playing with it. That's why they telling these lies and making these fake Hollywood movies and these fake Discovery Channel and National Geographic documentaries. Okay? They are playing with your history. Okay? But these are your ancestors. You have to stand up and fight for your ancestors. You have to speak against the lies. Okay? Because it is wrong. They know they are wrong, but they don't care. Okay? But you have to put up a fight and you have to expose these lying, racist, white supremacists. Okay? All right. Now, I'm going to be closing out soon. There will be a part 2 to this. Okay? And I'm going to put up some information to finish debunking this lie. Okay? I'm going to put up some quotes by Herodotus to finish debunking this lie. And also, white supremacists also want to use the quote by the ancient geographer called Strabo. Okay? Strabo, S-T-R-A-B-O. Now, when we deal with Strabo, Strabo was an ancient Greek geographer that lived during the 1st century AD. Now, when he came into Egypt, this was during a later time. This was 400 years, almost 500 years after Herodotus and after the Persian invasion. When Strabo came into Egypt, the Persians, the Greeks, and the Romans already conquered Egypt and settled in Egypt. Now, Strabo, in his geography of India, he says that the people, as for the people of India, I believe it's book 15, it says, as for the people of India, those in the south are more like the Ethiopians, while those in the north are more like the Egyptians. Okay? Now, we have to understand, when Strabo came into Egypt, in his geography of Egypt, he said in book 17, okay, I believe book 17, chapter 27 through 32, he says that Egypt was inhabited by mixed race foreigners, okay? By mixed race foreigners, in their old settlements and their old cities were deserted and in ruins, okay? Meaning that the people of the older times were no longer dwelling there, okay? Now, that's why you have the Egyptians today. They call themselves Egyptians, but they are not true Egyptians, okay? Just like in America, okay? The Native Americans, the real Americans, are the Native American Indians, while the other Americans are foreigners, okay? Same in Egypt, okay? The black Egyptians are the real Egyptians, the native Egyptians. The other Egyptians are foreigners, okay? You can call yourself Egypt because you're living in Egypt, but that doesn't make you indigenous to Egypt, and that doesn't make you a descendant of Pharaoh. Now, Strabo came into Egypt during a later time, and he said the Indians, the North Indians, were more closer to the Egyptians. Now, but Herodotus, okay, which was before Strabo, when he came into Egypt, this was during the time when Egypt was just being invaded by the Persians. So the Egyptians of Herodotus were more pure, were more African, were more true Egyptian. And Herodotus compared his Egyptian, the old Egyptian, to the Ethiopians of Africa. Now in book 7, 69 through 71, I believe, he mentions the Ethiopians of Libya, or Ethiopians of Africa, and the Ethiopians of Asia, or the Southern Indians. Okay, there wasn't really Ethiopians, but they were Southern Indians, but he calls them Ethiopians anyway. Okay, but he mentions the Ethiopians of Africa as woolly hair, and the Ethiopians or Southern Indians as straight hair. Okay, now these Southern Indians, they were black people with straight hair. Okay, but he compares the Egyptians, who he called black skin and woolly hair, more to the Ethiopians of Africa. Okay, so Herodotus' old Egyptians were more closer to the Ethiopians of Africa than they were to the Southern Indians of Asia. Okay, this is a fact. Okay, so the Egyptians of Strabo time were more mixed, okay, of different races of foreigners. These were not true Egyptians. Okay, now I will be closing out soon, but I want to touch on how this Noah flood story, how this white Caucasian Egypt came about. It has its root in the Noah flood story. Okay, because according to the Noah flood story, the race of the Egyptians originated from the area of the Caucasus Mountains. Then from the Caucasus Mountains, they migrated east to Mesopotamia and built the Tower of Babel. Okay, and from Mesopotamia, they scattered the earth, and the sons of Noah, of Mizraim, came into Egypt and became the ancestor of the Egyptians. No, this is a lie. Okay, because according to the Egyptians disagree with the Hebrews in saying that their king came from the Caucasus Mountains or Mesopotamia. No, the Egyptians are saying that their first king, which is Menes, who the Hebrews call Mizraim, okay, Menes was a historical king of Egypt, and according to the Egyptians, he was a native African who originated from the south of Egypt, or that part of Egypt that borders the Sudan. And from the south, he came north and conquered the north of Egypt and united the two lands and became the first pharaoh of Egypt. Now this is proven with archaeological facts. Okay, because if you look on the Narmer palette, it shows the first pharaoh with the white crown of the south conquering the north. Okay, this shows that the south predated the north. Okay, so according to the Egyptians, their first king and their ancestors did not come from no Mesopotamia, or did not come from no Caucasus Mountains in Turkey or Mount Ararat. Okay, their first king was a native African, and the Hebrews added Cush, Mizraim, in the land of Ham into this Noah flood myth in order to try and lay claim to it. Okay? But the Egyptians disagreed. Now, the Bible tends to repeat itself, because when you go into Genesis 10, it says that this scattering of the earth of the sons of Noah took place during the time of Peleg. Okay? Peleg was the great-grandson of Shem. Okay? Now, when you go into Genesis 11, it says Peleg, which during the time that this dispersion took place, Peleg lived 1,000 years after the death of Shem. Okay? You know what that is telling you? That is telling you that Egypt, Cush, Mizraim, the land of Ham, was already there. It was already established before this so-called dispersion from Mesopotamia. Okay? Then it goes on to say in chapter 11, it mentions Shem again. Because it mentions Shem in chapter 10, but it also mentions him again to let you know. It says that these are the sons of Shem. So it is telling you that it was the Shemites that came from Mesopotamia in the east and scattered the earth, not the Egyptians. The Egyptians said that they were native to Africa. Okay? And this myth, they don't agree with it. Okay? And it also admits in the Bible, in Ezekiel 29 and 14, that the Egyptians, says, I will return the Egyptians to the land of Pathros, back to the land of their origin. Pathros means southland. Okay? So, it's saying that the Egyptians came from the south, and then when their empire fell, they returned back to the south. This is why you have the descendants of the pharaohs in the south, in the interior of Africa. But the people there today are not descendants of the pharaohs. Okay? And black people, when you looking for yourself, when you're trying to find out who you are in the Bible, it is not Israel. Okay? It is the sons of Ham. It is Mizraim. It is the Africans. We are the descendants of the pharaohs. Because the Western Africans were known as the Libyans, the Southern Libyans, okay? And the Ethiopians, the Western Ethiopians. These people were descendants of Mizraim. From the Nile Valley, they migrated and settled in inhabited all the lands from Chad, the oasis of Libya, to Nigeria, to the Niger River, to the Atlantic Ocean. These were the Libyans. And from Egypt, they inhabited all the lands west of the Nile Valley. Okay? And the descendants of Cush, okay, because the Egyptians came from Cush and they migrated north. Okay? And then the descendants of the Egyptians went west and inhabited the land called Libya. Now, Libya had no boundaries. Libya was a vast territory. It was not the Libya as shown on the modern map today. Okay? And you also had people who were there before these new migrants came into the western parts of Africa. You had the people called the troglodytes, who were a very ancient and prehistoric people, and the pygmies. And you had the Atlanteans, who once had a great city, but the city got destroyed and the survivors dwelt on the west coast of Africa. These were tall and strong people. Okay? Now, this is your history, black people. You have to claim it. You have to know it. Okay? So for all you who thinking that I'm here just to sound fancy, no. It makes some no, I am not here to sound all fancy, and I'm not here for money, and I'm not here for attention. I am doing this because I am sick and tired of the lies. Okay? Because you have these people that are educated, but they are just too corrupted and too racist, okay, and too dishonest to tell you the truth. And you have people who are not educated and just don't know, okay? But I am educated, and I'm here to tell you the truth, okay? So I'm going to wrap it up for this one, and it's going to be a part 2 where I'm going to post up all the scholarship because I like to back up what I say. But people, thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. This is your brother Radio 1. And until next time, Egypt stays in Africa. Peace, people.